I turned 18 sleeping next to a lawnmower and still smiled through my graduation. But when I came home, the garage was empty, my things were gone, and a sticky note said it all. I thought that was the worst part. Until I found the envelope no one ever meant for me to read. I turned 18 sleeping next to a lawnmower. Not metaphorically. Literally. My bedroom was a converted garage with oil-stained concrete floors, no insulation, and a pull-string bulb that buzzed like a dying bee. You think you'll remember your first legal drink, your first car, your first kiss. I remember the sound of dripping water hitting a rusted drain at 2 a.m. while I stared at the ceiling and wondered if my spine would ever forgive me for that futon. My name's Talia. I'm 19 now, and last week was my high school graduation. I didn't send my dad's wife an invite. And apparently that was disrespectful. She didn't raise me. She never even tried. But when Dad found out she wasn't on the guest list, he slammed a fork down at breakfast and said I was acting ungrateful. Like I'd forgotten all they'd done for me. Like it was generosity to shove me into a freezing garage while her daughters got matching bunk beds and Disney princess nightlights. You ever feel like a visitor in your own life? Like every kindness comes with a receipt you didn't know you were supposed to pay? That's how it's been since I was 15 when Dad married Krista and decided that her kids needed real stability. And I guess in his mind, stability meant warmth, carpet, and private bathrooms. For them. Me? I got the garage. A mattress that smelled like paint thinner and a promise that once we renovate, we'll figure it out. Spoiler, they never did. But I smiled. I nodded. I played along because, well, where else was I gonna go? Mom left when I was 10. She sends postcards sometimes, mostly from places I can't afford to pronounce. So I stayed. I shut up. I wore a hoodie in July to sleep. And I told myself it wasn't forever. Krista's girls, Ava and Melody, had playdates and glitter walls and sheet sets with their names embroidered in cursive. I had milk crates for shelves. No closet. No door, just a curtain which Krista would sweep aside without knocking like I was part of the storage. And every time I asked, even gently, even respectfully, "Can we maybe switch rooms?" Dad would sigh like I was draining his life force. "We talked about this, Tal. You've got your space." "Yeah. Next to a weed whacker." I know this probably sounds dramatic. But if you've ever had to explain to a guidance counselor why your homework smells like kerosene, you get it. Still, I kept my head down. I studied hard. I got into college. And when graduation came, I didn't want to make a scene. I just wanted one night. One moment. My name called. My cap tossed. A sliver of dignity. But Krista made it about her. She told my dad I was alienating the family. That it was a slap in the face. That if I really loved them, I'd show it publicly. You want to laugh? Go ahead. But this happened. So Dad pulled me aside the night before and said, "You can't expect us to come if Krista's not invited. It's all or nothing." I said, "Then don't come." He blinked like I slapped him. Then muttered something about living under his roof and biting the hand that feeds me. I just stared at him. What roof? My classmates posed for pictures with their parents in suits and sundresses. I posed with my guidance counselor and an old family friend who drove 2 hours to be there. I smiled. I held my diploma. I swallowed the lump in my throat. But when I came home, the garage light was off. My stuff was gone. And taped to the door was a sticky note with one sentence written in Sharpie. "You made your choice. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been punished for choosing peace over performance?" Because I stood there in my graduation gown, holding an empty duffel bag and a leftover cupcake from school, and I felt that sentence like a gut punch. You probably think I'm exaggerating. That maybe there's some part I'm leaving out. I wish I were. The cupcake frosting had melted in the heat. It stuck to my fingers like guilt I didn't earn. But the real shock came the next morning when I found out where they put all my things. And who had taken my room. I didn't cry that night. I just sat outside the garage, diploma in my lap, pretending I wasn't cold. Pretending I didn't see the silhouettes laughing through the dining room window. My graduation gown still had safety pins in the hem. My shoes were $12 flats from a thrift store. But I'd imagined walking back into that house with my head high, maybe even earning a "we're proud of you." Instead, I got evicted by Post-it. The next morning I knocked. Nobody answered. So I walked around the side, past the trash bins in Krista's herb garden and opened the back door with my old key. The hallway smelled like cinnamon and lemon cleaner, fake domesticity. And something else, new paint. That's when I saw it. The garage door was wide open. Inside, everything was spotless. Empty. My crates, futon, chipped mirror gone. A brand new rug had been rolled out. A toddler's crib sat in the center with pastel curtains fluttering beside the open window. They'd repurposed the garage again. Not for me this time. For Krista's sister. And her baby. No one told me she was moving in. You ever stand in a place that used to be yours and realize it never really was? I backed away slowly. My legs felt hollow like I was walking through someone else's house. I turned the corner into the living room and there she was, Krista, sitting cross-legged on the couch, scrolling her phone like nothing had happened. "Oh," she said, looking up. "Didn't expect you back so early." She didn't offer a seat. Didn't ask where I slept. Just motioned vaguely toward the kitchen and said, "Your stuff's in boxes. We needed the space, so I figured you want to go through it yourself." In that moment, I wasn't angry. I was numb. So I went into the kitchen and there they were. 4 boxes. One of them already half crushed from being dragged across the floor. My notebooks, winter coat, and baby photos were shoved together like leftovers. And right on top a card. The one I'd made for my dad when I was 12. It had a stick figure drawing of me and him at a carnival. He kept it on his desk for years. Now it was bent in half. I took the boxes and left. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked. If you're wondering where Dad was, same. I texted. I called. No answer. Then at 8:47 p.m., I got a message. "This isn't how family treats each other. You embarrassed us. Actions have consequences." Us? Not me. Not "I love you." Just us. Like I was up against a committee. I remember sitting on the curb, hugging my boxes like they keep me warm. A neighbor passed by and gave me that half-sympathetic smile people use when they're afraid to ask questions. I wanted to scream, "Do you know what they did?" But I didn't even know how to explain it. Because how do you describe years of erasure? Not abuse. Not violence. Just slow, calculated removal. Ava and Melody never got told to eat in the garage. Their report cards went on the fridge. Mine disappeared into drawers. Every holiday they got stockings with their names. I got a gift bag. Krista always smiled. Always called me honey. But every kindness came with an edge. "You know you're not like them," she once whispered. "They need more structure." As if I was born feral. But I let it slide. Again and again. Because I thought I could earn my place if I worked hard enough. If I stayed invisible just long enough to be needed. Turns out I was never part of the equation. Just a temporary tenant. The next day, I rented a storage unit. 20 miles from town. Cheapest one I could find. It smelled like rust and forgotten time. But it was mine. And on my way out I checked my phone. 2 missed calls from an unknown number. And a voicemail. It wasn't from my dad. It was from Krista's sister. The bent Father's Day card still smelled like dust and lavender. I pressed it flat between my palms like I could smooth the past. The voicemail was only 20 seconds long. But what she said changed everything I thought I knew about my father. I listened to the voicemail 5 times before I could move. It was quiet at first, the sound of a baby cooing, some background chatter. Then Krista's sister's voice came through, low and rushed. "Hey, just so you know, I didn't ask for your room. That was your dad's idea. He said you wouldn't be staying long anyway. I thought you knew." Then it cut out. No goodbye. No apology. Just 20 seconds that shattered the last piece of the story I'd been clinging to, that maybe Krista pushed him into it. That maybe my dad wanted to do better. But he didn't. He planned it. He cleared out my things before I even graduated. I sat in that storage unit, surrounded by my life in cardboard, and I felt something I didn't recognize at first. Not grief. Not shock. Shame. Because I'd spent 4 years shrinking myself to fit into a family that had already made space without me. And the worst part? I thought I was being strong by staying. I thought enduring meant loyalty. You ever mistake endurance for love? Yeah. Same. That night, I finally opened the last box, the one I hadn't touched. Inside was my mom's old journal. She left it behind when she left us. I'd read parts of it before. But this time, I flipped to the final entry. And my hands started shaking. Talia strong. But I see what's happening. Krista smiles at her like a guest. And Robert just lets it happen. Robert. My dad. The date? 2 days before she disappeared. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some declaration of guilt. Maybe a hint of regret. But all I saw was silence. She knew. And she left anyway. I put the journal down. My mouth tasted like metal. And then I remembered something. A file. A folder Dad kept in the hallway cabinet, labeled education. He used to pull it out during tax season. Maybe my graduation stuff was in there. Maybe there was something I could take with me, proof of who I was before they rewrote me out. So I went back. Not to ask. Not to beg. Just to retrieve what was mine. It was almost midnight. I wore black. Hoodie up. Quiet as a thought. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. I slipped in through the garage door, the new nursery door. The air smelled like baby powder and betrayal. The cabinet was still there. Same folder. Same label. Inside was a stack of report cards, school photos, certificates, mine. But behind those was something else. A sealed envelope. Yellowed. Thick. And in my mom's handwriting, for Talia when she's old enough. No one ever gave it to me. I held it like it might disappear. My legs went soft. I didn't open it there. I ran. Back to the storage unit. Back to my breath catching in my throat. And inside? A letter. 4 pages. No hello. No goodbye. Just truth. I left because he asked me to choose. Him, or you. And I knew he'd never love you the way I did. But I also knew he'd never hurt you. I was wrong. I'm sorry I left you alone in that house. I read it once. Then again. Then I screamed into my knees until my throat went raw. Because she hadn't abandoned me. She'd been exiled. And I was too young to understand. The next day I sent a photo of the letter to my dad. Just the first paragraph. No caption. He didn't reply. But someone else did. Krista, this is manipulation. You don't know the whole story. I didn't reply either. Because for the first time I wasn't trying to explain myself. I was done playing the villain in someone else's script. I blocked them both. But the silence after. It didn't feel like freedom. It felt like falling through a memory you can't land in. The letter smelled like cedar and ink, like a version of her that still loved me across distance. I thought the worst part was over. But 3 days later, someone knocked on my storage unit door holding a grocery bag and a lie I wasn't ready to hear. You can survive without closure. But it changes how you walk. I moved like a ghost for a while. Didn't speak unless spoken to. Didn't correct people when they called me resilient or strong. Because strong girls don't cry in public storage units, right? After the knock on the door, after I heard Krista's voice on the other side, I didn't open it. I just froze. She kept talking like I wasn't hiding behind corrugated steel. Talia, I brought you some things. Groceries. Toilet paper. I thought you might not have. Her voice cracked. I'm not trying to hurt you. I swear. This got so out of hand. Just let me explain. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Eventually, I heard the bag rustle. Then silence. Then the sound of her heels walking away across gravel. When I opened the door an hour later, the bag was still there. It had peanut butter, ramen, trail mix, and a pack of strawberry gum. The same kind she used to reward Ava for finishing her chores. I didn't eat any of it. That was the week I found a part-time job at a coffee stand near campus. The owner, Carol, didn't ask many questions. She just said, you show up on time, you get paid. Simple. Merciful. I showered at the gym. Slept behind boxes. Brushed my teeth with a bottle of water. I told people I was in transition if they asked. They never asked twice. And still, the world kept spinning. Instagram showed Ava's new ballet recital. Krista posted selfies from her girl spa day with Melody. Dad tagged along to a barbecue with friends, beer in hand, smile wide. Public versus private. Perception versus truth. They lived in comfort, I lived in caffeine and duct tape. You ever scroll through someone's perfect life, while sitting on a concrete floor eating soup out of a paper cup? But I didn't delete them. Not yet. I needed the reminder. That I wasn't crazy. That I hadn't dreamed the whole thing. That's when I started writing. Not a book. Not a blog. Just little letters. To no one in particular. Scraps of paper I taped to the wall. Each one held a truth I'd swallowed for too long. You told me family was forever. I just didn't know mine had an expiration date. You said I was lucky to have a roof. You never said it came with conditions. I never wanted revenge. I just wanted room to breathe. It didn't fix anything. But it helped. And then something happened. Carol asked me to work the early shift, 5:30 a.m. I was tired. I almost said no. But something in her voice said she needed help. So I said yes. And that morning, I made lattes for nurses, garbage collectors, tired moms, and one man who left a $50 tip and said, "Looks like you've seen some things." I laughed for the first time in weeks. That shift was the first time I felt real again. Not invisible. Not discarded. Just present. I went back to the storage unit and cleaned. Organized my boxes. Folded my clothes. I even found a scented candle someone gave me years ago, birthday gift from a teacher, still unused. I lit it. And for the first time since the garage, the air smelled like something other than rust. I don't know what healing looks like. But I know it doesn't always come in big, cinematic waves. Sometimes it smells like lavender and old notebook pages. The gum Krista left sat on the shelf for days. I never touched it, but I never threw it away either. But the next week, something showed up that didn't belong. A manila envelope. No return address. And inside, a birth certificate. Only it wasn't mine. The envelope was thick, creased at the edges. No name, no sender. Just my address scrawled in all caps like someone didn't want to be recognized. Inside was a single folded sheet, a birth certificate. But it wasn't mine. It was Ava's. Krista's daughter. The golden one. But the listed father wasn't my dad. It took me a full minute to process the name. And when I did, I laughed, the kind of dry, broken laugh that hurts more than it heals. Not because it was funny, but because for years they said I was the outsider. And now I had proof that their perfect family portrait was just airbrush fiction. You ever find out the thing that destroyed you was built on a lie? Because I held that paper like a detonator. I didn't plan to go back. I didn't want revenge. But something in me, something small and quiet and done being erased, knew this couldn't sit in a drawer. So I printed a copy. Put it in an envelope of my own. No note. No threat. Just facts. And I mailed it. To Krista. 3 days later, my phone lit up while I was closing the coffee stand. Blocked number. Voicemail. I didn't listen to it right away. I waited until I was back in my storage unit, surrounded by boxes that now felt less like exile and more like armor. Then I pressed play. You're cruel. You think you know everything, but you don't know what we've been through. Ava doesn't need to be dragged into this. You crossed a line. Cruel. They called me cruel. I didn't respond. I just turned off my phone. But the next morning, she was waiting outside the coffee stand. Krista. Hair perfect. Eyes puffy. Holding a cup of coffee she clearly hadn't touched. 5 minutes, she said. That's all I'm asking. So I gave her 3. She started with flattery. You've always been strong. Then guilt, he didn't know how to raise a daughter alone. Then deflection, that certificate doesn't change what we built. I didn't speak. I just stared at her like I was seeing a painting in the wrong light. And then she said it. You're better than this. I know you are. I blinked. Better than what? I asked. Then exposing our family. I tilted my head. Our family. That's when she faltered. For just a second. Her mouth opened. But no words came out. I stood up, took off my apron, and said, You said I was lucky to live in a garage. You said silence was love. You said I should be grateful for leftovers and shadows. And now you want my mercy. She looked at me like she wanted to cry. But I wasn't interested in her tears anymore. I stepped closer, not angry, just clear. I'm not trying to ruin your life, Krista. I'm reclaiming mine. She didn't say another word. She left. And this time she didn't come back. I went home, to my little unit, and ripped up the last gum wrapper she gave me. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like removing rot. You ever walk away from someone and realize the silence feels cleaner than the apology you never got? The strawberry gum finally lost its scent. I didn't even notice until I tossed it. But the real surprise came later that night. A text from my dad. Just 3 words. Can we talk? Can we talk? That's all it said. No punctuation. No context. No apology. 3 words that arrived like an aftershock, too late to help, too early to ignore. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Then I stared at the dark, wondering what part of me he thought still belonged to him. The truth? I wanted to respond. Even after everything. Even knowing what he did. Because for a moment, just a flicker, I imagined he might be different. That maybe the silence had taught him something. But when I finally answered, What do you want to talk about? He replied with a photo. It was Ava and Melody in the backyard. Swing set. Smiles. Underneath, he wrote, Things don't have to stay broken. You ever want to scream at your screen? Because that message, that manipulation, made my whole body clench. Not sorry. Not I failed you. Just a smiley picture and a guilt trip. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. The next morning, my aunt, dad's sister, called me. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. She started with, Sweetheart, I'm not picking sides. But maybe you could just talk to him? He's struggling. Struggling. You know what struggling looks like? Sleeping in a storage unit while your family pretends you vanished. Not barbecue photos and messages about starting fresh. But my aunt didn't stop. He still loves you. He just made mistakes. And Krista's in a tough spot too now that everything's out. Do you really want to leave things like this? That's when I realized what this was. Not reconciliation. Reputation management. They didn't want me back. They wanted the problem to go away. To fix the optics. So I said, I need space. She replied, Well, just don't do anything you'll regret. Family is forever. That phrase, family is forever. It haunted me for hours. Until I finally sat down, opened my journal and wrote one sentence. Family is not forever when it's conditional. I stopped answering the phone. I stopped justifying myself to people who were only there to smooth things over, not to face the truth. And when people at work asked why I seemed distracted, I said, I'm detoxing from being invisible. They laughed. But I wasn't joking. One afternoon, Carol sat with me during break. She didn't pry. She just sipped her coffee and said, You don't owe anyone your silence. I think I almost cried. Because it was the first time someone gave me permission to have a voice. That night I did something small. I bought a used table lamp from a thrift store. Brought it to my unit. Plugged it in. Warm light. No overhead buzz. Just a little corner of peace. And then I wrote a final letter. Not to Dad. Not to Krista. To me. You didn't imagine it. You didn't deserve it. And you don't have to keep proving your pain to people who caused it. I folded it. Taped it to the wall above my bed. Read it every morning before work. And when another message came, this time from Melody, the youngest, saying, "Why don't you love us anymore?" I didn't reply. Not because I didn't love her, but because I loved myself more now. The new lamp glowed soft and gold. Not bright, but enough to see myself clearly. 1 week later I got a letter in the mail. No stamp. No return address. Just my name. Written in shaky handwriting I hadn't seen in years. And inside my mother's phone number. Took me 3 days to call. I kept folding and unfolding the paper. The handwriting was unmistakable, slanted, careful. Like each letter was a held breath. My mother used to write like that when she helped me with spelling tests. But I hadn't seen her since I was 10. She never called. Never showed up. I used to imagine she was dead because that hurt less than thinking she just didn't want me. So when I held her number I didn't know what to feel. Hope, rage, grief, all of it. And none of it. The call rang 4 times. Then a voice answered. Hello. Soft. Older. Unsure. I froze. It's Talia, I said. I got your number. Silence. Then a breath. I didn't think you'd call. Neither did I. She didn't launch into a monologue. Didn't cry or beg for forgiveness. She just said, I heard what happened. I'm sorry. I should have come back sooner. But I was afraid I'd make it worse. You ever want to scream and hug someone at the same time? That's how it felt. We talked for hours in fits and fragments. She was living in Michigan now, working as a florist. She never remarried. She said she watched my school photos online sometimes, but didn't want to interfere. As if love is interference. I asked her why she left. She said, because he told me I couldn't stay and take you. And I thought he'd care for you in his way. I thought being near was better than fighting a war I couldn't win. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead I said, I'm okay now. And for the first time I meant it. We didn't make plans. We didn't promise a new future. But we didn't hang up in anger either. She said, if you ever want to visit, the guest room's not a garage. And I laughed. For real this time. That night I sat in my little unit. Lit the candle again. Let it burn all the way down. And I started packing. Not out of desperation. Not because I had nowhere else to go. But because I was ready to choose where I went next. The table lamp came with me. So did the journal. But I left the gum. And the pain. You ever wonder if healing just sneaks up on you? Like maybe you don't notice the weight is gone until you sit up straighter one day and realize you're not carrying them anymore. I never moved back in with my mother. But we talked. Sometimes on Sundays. Sometimes when the air felt heavy and old wounds ached in strange places. She sent me photos of flowers. I sent her poems I wrote on coffee napkins. We didn't fix everything. But we weren't broken anymore. I got a small apartment 6 months later. A real bed. A chip desk I painted myself. The walls were uneven and the neighbors were loud. But it was mine. One afternoon while unpacking, I found the last letter from Krista. I'd never opened it. Still sealed. Still waiting. I didn't open it. I burned it in the sink. Watched the paper curl and blacken and disappear. Not because I hated her. But because I didn't need her words to tell me who I was anymore. You don't need everyone to understand your story. Just make sure you believe it happened. The candle wick finally crumbled to ash. No more scent. No more flame. Just warmth that lingered. They don't get access to the version of me I built from the ruins.